So it's PTSD Awareness Month here in June, and we're going to talk a little bit about PTSD.
Okay, I know. I'm excited. This should be really good.
We do. Me and my bud Alyssa, we're both trauma therapists. We have a little bit of knowledge about PTSD, and we'd love to share it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what better time, right? PTSD Awareness Month. Great time to talk about it. So
to talk about it. And, it's interesting because I'm seeing a lot in the news right now about PTSD. Specifically, I was watching that video about Gary Sinise, the actor, and all he's doing for individuals with PTSD, first responders. It's pretty amazing.
I know. Well, when you sent it, I don't know that I would have ever picked out his name before as an actor. And then I saw his face, which, I mean, I don't know about you. I always think of Forrest Gump when I see him. I'm sure he has started a lot of different things. But think of like Lieutenant Dan,
Yeah, like everybody knows Lieutenant Dan. He was great in that movie. And as I was watching some of the content that's out there right now, just how the different veterans are saying, oh yeah, he played that part really well. But I have to tell you, I have a claim to fame with Gary Sinise, okay? Right, you ready? I mean, this is wild. So my grandfather, Grandpa Ben Vidrickson, was in a movie with Gary Sinise.
Really? Was your grandpa an actor?
No, my grandpa was... my grandpa was a state senator in Kansas in the 80s and 90s. When I was a kid, I remember campaigning and doing all the things for grandpa. We were on the float and the parade and all the things. So, and then we would go page of the Capitol and all the things. Well, Gary Sinise did a movie on Truman, and he was President Truman, and my grandpa played the vice president. He didn't have any lines. He didn't say a thing, but he was in the movie. And so that's my claim to fame.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. What a crazy connection you have.
Hilarious. Anyway, that's how I recognized him. I was looking at, I was like, all this stuff's popping up on socials and such with Gary Sinise. And my husband said, don't you remember your grandpa was in the movie with him? And I totally forgot that. I mean, I would have never been together, but I was really impressed. I mean, first I was saddened, his son and his death and his wife's cancer and yes. But then to see what he's doing with his foundation for veterans, and especially those who have lost limbs, and building homes for them. And it's just amazing when you see someone who's so in the public eye, who is pointing out this problem we have in society. We have these people who serve us, who are suffering in really intense ways.
Right.
And if it wasn't for people like him, shouting it out, this is a problem. Let's support them. Let's raise money. Let's get them homes. Let's do all the things.
Totally.
Maybe they would get lost in this,
Right. Well, because when you think about mental health, not just PTSD, but so much of it is this unseen piece where people are hurt, right? And you look at somebody like a veteran who, on the surface, they seem to be living a normal life. And a lot of times you have no idea the internal struggle. And so the fact that he's bringing so much awareness to this, in fact, when you first sent it to me, because I think of him as Lieutenant Dan, right, in this famous role, where you really watch him in this story go from being in the military in this prestigious role, then becoming handicapped through the process, struggling through it, and then kind of this towards the end, this victory of him kind of working through a lot of that. I wondered, I wonder if a lot of this came from this role. And then he goes on to explain, yes, it did, which is incredible that movie came out early 90s probably, and it impacted him this much that the ripple effect of him really shedding light on something that's so important. It's pretty incredible.
That just gives me chills when you say it. That's so cool. It's so awesome how God orchestrates our life in such a way that, to platform somebody like him in this role and culture that he has, and then to give a passion and a heart for others. And, you and I, as mental health counselors, we're both trauma therapists. We see people who are wounded in variety of different ways, when it comes to PTSD, like there are a lot of different issues that can cause this. It's not just veterans who have PTSD. I mean, I think in the old school term for it would be shell shock. The veteran went back home and like couldn't do all the things and was having nightmares and these kinds of things. And now we know, it's called PTSD, but it's not just veterans, right? It's anybody in the military. It could experience something that is stressful. And we also have a lot of like first responders in every, I mean, we're considered first responders. We get PTSD from our job as well.
Mm-hmm.
But then we've got police officers, firefighters, paramedics. Like here in Charlotte, there's an organization that's starting a first responders like clinic just for health of police officers, right? The things they've gone through, like think about COVID and all of that. Healthcare workers, people who are like going to the hospital and seeing people put in, think about psychiatric hospitals and what that must be like.
Right. Well, and I love, yes, PTSD extends so far beyond veterans, although I think that's where the term got started or coined was with veterans, if I'm accurate about that. But yeah, it extends to so many professions. What I love about places where they're starting clinics for certain professionals like first responders or police officers is, I have a neighbor across the street who's a police officer, and we talk all the time about how they won't get help because it is seen through this lens of weakness, right? And the reality about PTSD is that it's not weakness, it's this injury. Something happened to them, to their body, too fast for them to be able to really process it. And then your body just naturally kicks into doing what it needs to do to survive. And then you end up with all of these symptoms, right? Of dissociation or flashbacks or nightmares that they don't fully understand why it's happening to them. They just feel like, what is wrong with me that I wasn't able to navigate this situation? It's still impacting me today. And so
I can act like here I am before this event happened and I'm functioning, I'm thinking clearly, I'm taking care of business, I'm doing all my things, my relationships are going well, et cetera, or decently. And then this event happens, this life-altering event, and here I am like not able to have healthy conversations, breaking down emotionally, having flashbacks, nightmares, and intrusive thoughts.
yes.
Body's going into fight or flight, right? My body's going to hyperarousal, maybe going into panic attacks, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Or all of a sudden they're numbing a lot, right? Like they're checking out. They're not sure why. They're finding things to cope and help to numb. Even like things like fogginess or difficulty concentrating. And sometimes it can be really hard if you're not aware of what PTSD is or you've never experienced it and you're experiencing for the first time. You're like, what is wrong with me? Right? Why do I feel trapped?
Working with a police officer's wife once and like her talking to me about like, this is common for police officers. Like we met, we got married, we fell in love, we had this fine life. And now this person has so much PTSD that he's become even dangerous to me. Like it's really common for, domestic violence to happen in the home of someone who has PTSD because it's like this person like this before. Yeah. And because serving us in our population, like I even think about like childcare workers, like protective services workers. Like, what are these people seeing? They're going into these homes, looking at these specific things, and then it affects, the way that they're able to live out their life.
Right.
It's really
Yep. Well, I think you bring up a great point, Monica. PTSD doesn't just affect the person who has it, right? It affects the relationships around them, their marriages, their relationships with their kids. It has pretty wide-reaching effects. And so I think just what you're bringing up, I have so many clients where I'm working with a couple and one person has PTSD. The other person just cannot wrap their mind around, why are they so reactive? Why has this is a completely different person than the one I married. What is going on? And so they have such a hard time understanding the impacts of it.
Exactly. And what I noticed too is that these things are progressive, right? And so it's like you can have PTSD from, one incident, like an assault, a car accident, violence, like people who are, having to kill someone or whatever. These things can happen. But what if then another thing happens and then another thing happens and another just complicates this complex PTSD and of course these things, one thing leads to another a lot of times, and it's that compounding effect. And it really can change, your ability, and from a life model perspective, the way we talk about, life model, you and I love the life model. It's like you aren't able to show up like your true identity. You're not able to show up like your true self because this wound itself is now taken over, And I know you and I know, like, this is not the final letter for these people. Like, so many of us have issues that create symptoms of PTSD, whether or not we'd be diagnosed fully with the disorder. But we also know there's treatment out there. People can't overcome these things. The body can metabolize the effects of PTSD, but addiction's not going to help you, right? That's going to cope for the moment. There's other things that help you cope for the moment, but there are also treatments that can actually help somebody, their body actually release it and move through the symptoms. Our brain and our bodies are designed to heal themselves.
Which is pretty amazing. Right. And I know when people are trapped in the depths of PTSD, it sometimes doesn't feel that way. And so even putting language to it and helping people understand this is what is going on. I often use the analogy, if you've seen Inside Out, I love that, they send all of these memories down to long-term storage. And it's like these memories, these incidents that happened, it's like there's a malfunction. And so they're not getting sent now into long-term memory, right? And so it's just spinning on this loop, or it sometimes gets brought back up. And so it's like your body is reliving the experience all over again. And so talking about how do we help your body digest it, right? How do we help it get stored away so that we can learn something from it, we can grow from it, and then move on, right? So it becomes more of a scar instead of a wound, right? This open, infectious wound that just continues to perpetually hurt.
Continues to hurt. Exactly. And I personally love EMDR. I think the EMDR is amazing for this. There's also prolonged exposure therapy and cognitive processing therapy. And some people choose to take medications to help them just get through a portion of time. And of course, and especially this is life model too, like the social connectedness of like being with. I think a lot of PTSD causes people to want to isolate from themselves. They don't feel like they can show up like themselves. It's very scary. It's confusing. The brain is feeling scrambled. Prefrontal cortex really isn't online. It's the back of the brain that's being activated, that fight or flight, versus being able to live from your executive functioning. So it's very confusing. And then you might isolate. And that's not good either, because that's continues to perpetuate the issue.
Right. Because we need people to heal, right? I like what you said about like where it lives in our brain. I often describe it to my clients. I don't know if there's ways that you describe it to help them understand. I often say it's like moving your fire or your smoke alarm right over the stove. Like, can you imagine creating
You say it. No, I want to tell you on a call earlier today with our Jen Kersey, and I was just talking to her, and the fire alarm went off. And I'm not kidding. My boys, my 22-year-old, 19-year-old, are at home in the basement with and they were cooking lunch, and it goes off. And I said to her, it goes off every time because if they don't turn the fan on, because the fire alarm is right by. That's exactly. And it's like, so loud. I'm trying to get on the Zoom call.
Yes.
Have this conversation. You're right. Like, I couldn't continue the call. Like, she was like, I couldn't keep talking.
Yeah.
I had to just be
like, I think that technically, like, house code is you have to have your fire alarm like 15 feet from the kitchen or something, because the point of it is you want it to go off when it's actually needed, right? We need these systems in place that send us into fight, flight, or freeze when we actually need them. But when it's like right over your stove, it makes cooking a nightmare, right? It's like, I don't really want to do anything. And this is what happens with PTSD. It's like, man, when I try to do just about anything, this alarm is going off in my head and I can't function, right?
Yeah.
And so we talk about the amazing thing with PTSD is, just like you mentioned, there's so many different modalities that come at this from different ways because, nobody's one size fits all. We need different approaches to kind of tackle this. But it's like slowly moving that smoke detector further and further and further away from the stove and quieting those alarm bells so that we can actually function the way that we were designed to, which is incredible that there's hope in it,
There is so much hope because we know our systems are designed to organize themselves, right? And so we're born into chaos and confusion. And a lot of times our parents were born into the same thing. And so they're giving us their best, but it's not good enough. And it's like our system receives these things and it just throws us even further off. But if we can get into rhythms in our own individual lives with healthy rhythms like exercise and sleep and eating, this, and then get to a therapist and somebody who's skilled in treating this, and get community around you. Not everybody's going to be able to handle this, but there are people who are mature enough who will be those great, but who will be with us. And some people, I think it feels very invalidating sometimes when, like, let's just say you have a friend or a family member who went through the exact same thing. You're traumatized by it. They're not. Like, why is that? Well, some people just don't, some people are, it's just how we're each wired. So there's no shame right? Some people are just more resilient. They can handle more things to come their way. Other times people are dissociating and seeing. So they're split. Their brain's splitting off into different sections, and that's why it doesn't affect them in the same way.
Right. So it looks like they're not affected because we're not showing the exact same symptoms, but in reality, they may well be.
Exactly. So I think our message today is that there is hope.
Yeah.
There's lots of hope. Do not, if you have PTSD or symptoms of it, do not fret. Do not worry. Like, find some resources, listen back to this audio that we just did and hear some of the things we're saying in terms of the treatment modalities, models, and the different things you can do. But just knowing that your brain can organize itself, you can better, and it's the amazing healing, the amazing self-healing systems of our brain and our body that we need. There's so much hope here. So don't lose hope. It's PTSD Awareness Month. We see you. We know you're out there. We know you're struggling, and we feel for you, and just give you that hope that there's more to what you're experiencing if you just kind of seek it out, find the right path.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So good to talk with you today, Alyssa.
Yes. Same.